Let me know. Is that the signal? Okay, all right. We are in a new meeting, so I'm going to read the statements again that I'm required to read. So subject to the requirements of section 2.06, which includes keeping minutes and allowing public participation, but notwithstanding any other provision of law, an open or closed meeting subject to this act may be conducted by audio or video conference without the physical presence of a quorum of the members, so long as the following conditions are met. As Board Vice President, I have determined that tonight's board meeting will be held remotely due to the continuing COVID-19 pandemic. I have based my decision on the following. The governor's COVID-19 disaster declaration currently remains in full force and effect throughout the state of Illinois. An in-person meeting is not practical or prudent this evening because of the COVID-19 pandemic. I have confirmed that all board members participating in the meeting this evening can hear one another and can hear all discussions during the meeting. We have arranged for members of the public to contemporaneously hear all discussion during tonight's meeting through our YouTube live web-based link available on the district website. The Vice President, myself, Stephen Mack, is present in person at Grayslake Middle School, which is one of our regular meeting locations. All votes this evening will be taken by roll call vote. As required by the Open Meetings Act, a verbatim recording of tonight's open session meeting will be kept and made available to the public on the district website. And the format for accepting public comments at this remote board meeting is via the Google form that is also posted on the district website. Okay. With that, I need a call to order, please.
Weedman.
Aye.
Mack.
Here.
Braden.
Here.
LaCroix.
Here.
Miller.
Here.
Knapp.
Present.
And Strack.
Here. Very good. That's an establishment of a quorum for our current meeting. Next, I need a motion to approve the agenda for this evening's meeting.
So moved.
Second. And a roll call vote.
LaCroix.
Aye.
Nash.
Aye.
Miller.
Aye.
Mack.
Aye.
Strack.
Aye.
Weedman.
Aye.
Braden.
Aye.
Very good. Thank you. That moves us to the public comment section for this meeting.
Okay, we do have public comment, and just as clarity for people who are watching, we also had public comment prior to our 5:30 closed session meeting, and this is continuation of that closed session, or that public comment that came in right at the very end of that, and public comment that's coming in now. And I think Mr. Wolf, you're going to get us started? Okay, and you see where we left off, yes? Okay, great.
That is correct.
Okay.
All right, so starting where we left off, from D46 parent, what happens when we have teachers choose not to take the vaccine? That is the reality of the situation. No matter when we return, COVID is not going away. We need to start dealing with it instead of running from it. All other districts are being proactive while we sit here going back and forth. And someone said there's already another variant, so we have to figure it and return to in-person. Public schools are not set up to support virtual learning long-term. From Sumero, if we are going to be compared to other schools and districts, then please compare plans as well. Number two, it's not about whether to protect teachers, it's about protecting the community. Number three, not all jobs are the same and don't all include such close contact. Number four, Grayslake teachers are still doing our jobs. We are not just doing it differently, or we are just doing it differently as many others are. Number five, I haven't heard much about mitigation efforts such as air purifiers. I would like to hear about that. Next comment is from Michelle McHale. COVID is a potentially deadly, life-altering disease. Scientists learn more every day as to the possible potential effects. Recent studies show an increase in hospitalization in children. Then there's a citation of a news article. Why are we in a hurry to return to school when our numbers are so high? Are we that undervalued as teachers that does not matter if we suffer long-term effects or die? Does the community feel that those who want to return regardless of numbers should have the choice to decide about my safety and well-being in the interest of everyone's health, and so that decisions can be trusted by the majority? It would be good to be certain the latest science is duly considered. Woodview Mom. Today I learned that 21 of the 26 school districts have returned to school. Grays Lake is not one of them. How is it safe for 81% of districts in Lake County, but not D46? We need to find a way to move forward. Enough is enough. Stop the fear mongering. The fear mongering has to stop. We can not stay in remote learning indefinitely. From CD. There have been several comments about what other districts are doing. I think we need to think about the saying we all heard and used. If they all jump off a cliff, should you? We need to think about and worry about ourselves and what is the smallest, safest route to take, not what others are doing and what is the easiest. It's about life and death. Excuse me.
That's okay. You know what? Mr. Wolk, I'll go ahead and take over. The next one is from a staff member. It's D46 staff member. It says, staff are forced to work with young children in an unsafe environment. You cannot compare school to the grocery store. If you don't comply with the rules, you can be denied access to the store. No one wants to deny access to children. Yet how do we handle when children cannot or do not comply with social distancing and mask wearing? How is it reasonable for staff and their families to count on young children complying with the safety measures? How can staff trust that families will not send their children to school sick, as has happened pre-pandemic? Staff and their families are at significant risk. Allow staff to be vaccinated so that we don't have to choose between keeping ourselves and our families safe or losing our jobs. The next one is from a concerned D46 parent, and this is the message. To our D46 school board, I wanted to take a few minutes to sit down to share my thoughts as a parent and as a business leader in this community. You have the opportunity to make a decision tomorrow that will be in the best interest for our school community. A decision to begin the safe transition to bring our students back to the classroom. Please vote to move forward with the hybrid learning plan. As a parent of 3, I can see how hybrid learning impacts my kids differently. My daughter, a sophomore at Grays Lake Central, is excited to safely return to GCHS 2 days a week starting next week. D127 has effectively communicated with the parents and students throughout the process and have committed to returning to school. For parents with children in both districts, the stark contrast in communication and trust is measurable. My youngest kids have publicly declared that they will be better off dropping out of school and getting jobs with their 5th grade and 8th grade educations than continue remote learning. They are not engaged, hate the slow pace of remote learning, and have developed a great disdain towards school despite their teachers and their parents' best efforts. Obviously, I have high standards for my children, and dropping out of school is not an option. But at the heart of the complaint is the truth. Online school has become something that they both loathe. I'm sorry, hang on. This is long, so I need to move things down. Okay, I can only imagine my boys' reactions when I tell them the school board failed them by keeping them in remote learning. Adding to their and our disappointment would be the knowing that neighboring schools are in session, private schools have successfully managed in-person learning the entire year, and their cousins and friends have been in schools in other states, nearby counties, and one town over. I implore you to be leaders. You were elected to this board not as union representatives, but as our children's advocates. You need to have their best interests at heart. Beginning hybrid learning, even in the limited capacity you are suggesting, is a necessary next step. Please look at the COVID incidence rates, which are exceptionally low per 100,000 people, and know that our kids will wear their masks, wash their hands, and remain a safe social distance from their peers. They just want to be back in school. As a real estate professional, I have been contacted by many families looking to nearby towns where in-person learning is being offered. They have lost faith that the D46 school board will do what is right for their students. You have an opportunity tonight to regain the trust of our parents and children. Please vote to begin hybrid learning in February and prove that you truly have our children's best interests at heart. Thank you, Jamie Herring. The next one comes from a concerned D46 parent. We can all probably agree that we want to resume normal life. We have been out of in-person learning for a long time. Why can't we allow staff the ability to get vaccinations to keep themselves, their families, and our children as safe as possible? Why would a few more weeks be worth taking such health risks, especially with the Lake County numbers rising to highest risk levels? Don't be short-sighted, please. From fellow teacher. I'm a teacher in another district in Lake County that was open this fall. We served lunch. We had not one single case of COVID, not one case. Please stop using lunch as an excuse. Please stop using the vaccine as an excuse. As someone who has lived through it as a teacher, please know that it will be okay. You will be socially distanced. I felt at much higher risk getting groceries than I ever did in the school building. You will be fine. Mr. Lewis, can you take over?
Yes, sorry. Here I go. This is from a concerned Meadowview parent. I would like to remind the board that while we understand that there are some staff members and parents who do not feel it is safe to go back yet and their reasons behind it, there are many in our community, especially many parents, that have not had a choice either to go to work. They need to go to provide for their families. I would like to know that those who are fearful to go back because of the spikes, are they truly just staying home and not going anywhere? Are they going to the grocery store, or did they go shopping for Christmas gifts? There are going to be risks everywhere. I truly believe that the benefits of returning to school, as many in prominent positions who run our country believe, outweigh the risks at this time. This was supposed to be temporary while the board and the district figured out how to get our kids back in the school safely. We have had plenty of time to figure this out. Also keep in mind that during this whole time, we as parents have not had any choice and have had to figure out how to work e-learning into our schedules and lives, and it has had a major impact for parents who have either one or two working parents. Why are we not given a choice? We really need to get moving like other districts in our area to figure out how to get our kids back in school. If not, I am aware of many parents who will be moving out of our district and or sending their kids to other schools, which will take money from this district. Lastly, I would love for the board to share what they have been doing with the money they have received from the government in reference to COVID. Can we not use that money to make sure proper safety is in place for returning to school? Can we not make sure that money is used to beef up technology so that our teachers can teach to the kids and class online in a better way? The next comment is from Amy M. A teacher said the Lake County Health Department metrics were in the highest risk category. I'd like to point out only one of the three metrics is in that category. The other two categories are listed in the moderate to low. Please look at all the data completely, not just one in isolation. The next one is from frustrated parent. Are teachers concerned about getting the vaccine before starting, or are they concerned about having to teach the full class period now? If they return, they won't be able to stop class early to go and help their own child. They won't be able to get up and get the cookies out of the oven. They won't be able to go for walks in the middle of the day in the neighborhood. They won't be able to stop class to clean up after the dog. I can see why a vaccine is a good smoke screen for what they won't be able to do anymore. If this wasn't happening, I wouldn't be able to so easily provide so many examples. The next comment is from Amy M. I don't think my first comment made it through. A teacher and another said we were in the highest risk category. There are three categories. The other two are in the low moderate category. Please look at all the data, just not one part. The next one is from Woodview Mom. Teachers are essential workers and should be expected to return, as are all other essential workers. Most teachers I have spoken to realize and respect this and are willing to return with the proper safety measure in place. How is it okay for Grayslake High School to return, but not elementary, especially K2, where transmission is negligible? I apologize. We need and deserve a solid explanation for this. The next one is from Lauren Manso. Hearing the people who are saying teachers need to go in, they have probably have not had COVID. It was literally the worst thing I've ever had to deal with, and I now have permanent damage to my lungs because someone did not take this virus seriously, and I caught it from work. I do not want anyone to have to go through that. Do people realize how much children like to move and to do not listen to protocols during regular times? Will families actually follow the procedures and the CDC guidelines as they are bringing up and not leave the state and not hang around other people that are not in their households? Virtual learning is the safest thing right now. Will the school district be providing desk shields for every teacher, assistant, and child's desks? What about recess? Children cannot take their masks off and stay 6 feet away from their friends. There are so many unanswered. Sorry, I've had some spacing issues. There are so many unanswered questions that have not been given answers to. If you cannot provide a solution to every problem someone has about the new safety plans, then the student should not go back. How would you and your child feel if you were the reason their teacher caught COVID and then the teacher or someone in their family died? I do not want that on my conscience. The next one is Woodview parent of 2. Not having the district students in classrooms at all thus far this year is beyond disappointing. The district and board has completely let down a community and failed its most valuable residents, our children. More districts than not, both in Lake County and the balance of the state, have children in the classroom where they belong. Basic and reasonable safety precautions, even less than those proposed by the district, significantly reduce the risk of spread. At this point in the pandemic, when so much has been learned and so many examples have been set by other school districts and other industries, it is embarrassing and wrong to not only not be in school already and not even have a plan and schedule for our students to return to school. Virtual learning is a temporary solution, not a long-term solution. While the academic aspect of school is often cited during debates about virtual learning or returning to a classroom, the social aspect of what kids gain by seeing their friends and teachers is rarely discussed. Students need social interaction with each other and their teachers. It is time to open the schools and let students back into school where they belong. Many of us chose to reside in Grayslake because of our school districts. We expect our school district to lead other districts, not follow them. Fortunately, in this instance, we have the ability and opportunity to follow other district examples and bring our children back into the classroom. This decision should be based on the children and the children only, and they deserve, need, and want to be in their classrooms. Make the right decision for the children. This next one is from a D46 teacher. We love your kids a lot. We want to be back with them so badly, but we've gone this far with the idea of keeping everyone safe, and everyone should include teachers, staff, and administration. We're a month-ish away from reaching that goal. Why stop when the finish line is in sight? Because we feel peer pressure from others to do what they're doing, the exact thing we teach kids to avoid. If we return at this point, the whole thing will be for naught. When I'm vaccinated, I'll be the first one back in the building, smiling from ear to ear, but I know staff returning without it will cause enough anxiety that they will not be the support that students need. Choice is so important. The staff hasn't been given one. If you respect teachers as much as we've heard over these last 9 months, please hear us now. Let us be vaccinated before return. The next one is from.
Would you like to take over?
I'll do one more. Thank
Okay.
you. This is from Concerned Parent. We are very concerned about hybrid learning. Our kids will need to remain remote for health reasons and will be directly and adversely affected by adding hybrid schooling. Hybrid teaching is much more complicated. Attentions will be split and quality of education will go down for both groups.
This one is from parent in D46. I'm trying to understand why any teacher, administrator, and staff in this district would be any more important than all the other people who have to go into work since COVID began. If my husband decided not to go in due to COVID, he would be let go, as is for many others. Teaching is a job as any other, which requires the employees to be on site to be successful at their job. If other schools can start in person, then our district can too. Stacy Michael writes, our children need to go back to school. There are 26 K-8 schools in Lake County. 21 of the districts have already been back and have concrete plans set in place. There's no reason at this point our kids cannot go back to school. Schools all over the county are succeeding at this. Catholic and private schools are as well. My child's teacher told us this week she cannot handle 20 plus kids on Zoom at once. She has requested help. My fourth grader was broken into reading groups, and she was going over the blends of A-E-I-O-U in fourth grade. She watches a movie at the end of the day in class on most days. Constantly says to me she's bored and can't take this anymore. My third grader has asked me if he can just quit. His teacher recently emailed me on his lack of focus and suggested seeing a pediatrician. Seriously? He doesn't want to focus because he's 8 and sitting in front of a computer for 6.5 hours a day. Do you do that as an adult at work? How can you expect our children to do this every single day? Open schools, give us a choice to send our kids back. Alexa Dunn writes, I'm writing tonight regarding the plan to reopen schools in Grays Lake. As a mother of an incoming kindergartner and a teacher who has been teaching in a school that has been fully in person since August, I would like you to move forward with a transparent plan to reopen all schools in Grays Lake in the next couple of weeks. I teach at Oak Grove School in Green Oaks, and although I realize opening one school building is different than opening several, I want you to know that it can be done safely and effectively. We too had staff feel uneasy at first, but with strong and confident leadership, we felt prepared and supported. Children are thriving, parents are thankful, and teachers are happy with the outcome. I feel my students are learning just as much as they would any other year, and not just academically, but we have been able to support their social emotional health in the midst of a global pandemic. Mitigation practices are in place. Oak Grove has been a safe place to teach and learn. It is time for Grays Lake to take the leap of faith and follow suit. This year aside, I am nervous about the lack of clear reopening plan in enrolling my daughter in kindergarten in the fall. In all honesty, I'm ready to enroll her in private kindergarten just so she will have a consistent place to attend each day. This isn't how I envisioned starting my kids in school when I made the choice to move to Grays Lake. When I moved here several years ago, I had high hopes for the community and school district. Please do what is right and vote to make sure the schools stay open. It has and can be done. As Larry David famously quoted, compromise is when both parties feel equally dissatisfied. As of now, it seems that only one side is dissatisfied, and that's hundreds of families that have not been given the choice to send their children back to school in Grays Lake. Let's equal the compromise and open the doors and allow our children a chance to learn and thrive. Susan K. writes, given the vaccination timeline, with staff possibly being vaccinated in early February, there would be 95% immunity at approximately 6 weeks out from that. Therefore, I urge the board to consider the health and safety of its staff, students, and family and delay the opening until that time. Nature of our work in a school with staff to spending several hours a day with children in small classrooms and cafeterias who often not have the best self-care, washing hands, touching face, mask, for example, put staff and students at an additional level of risk not present in our other occupations. I asked the board members and community to think if they would be comfortable going back to their offices and cubicles to work if not absolutely necessary. Those settings are much less likely to harbor viruses than a school full of children. If not, then why would we be asked to do so? I appreciate the board's concerns for the dedicated employees in D46 in regards to this matter. We all know from the daily news, this is a life and death matter. GMS parent writes, I hear a lot of teachers from the comments being afraid of the virus. Science has shown that children are not major spreaders, and teachers should only be concerned about other teachers. Cannot they be trusted to wear masks and remain distanced from one another? It's our children who are posing. It isn't our children who are posing the risk. If you behave as you are expected, as our children are to be expected, you should be face. Just follow directions, follow the science. Teaching family rights. Please consider the safety of teachers, both their physical and emotional health. They are working hard. They are working harder than they ever have. They are not just sitting at home. They are inventing new ways to teach and communicate with the students. Teachers are not islands. They have families and kids and other people to consider. They did not enter this profession and with the thought of that they would have to be putting their lives at risk like first responders do. Teachers deserve a choice. Frederick staff member writes, I've listened to the comments past and present along with seeing social media posts about returning to school hybrid. Many community members think that teachers do not want to go back. We actually do want to return to school in a safe way, in a way that is safe for us, your children, and all families involved. Going back now is putting us all at risk. We cannot keep comparing our district to others. We do not know their specifics. One being, are they putting staff members at higher risk by offering lunch and the possibility of cross-contamination? To say that our school district and teachers have failed your students is unfair. To say that we do not do our jobs is unfair. We're all working very hard to make your children succeed in the most difficult of times. Thank you for your time. Give me a second. Christian Roy Hupel writes, in recent days, I've learned two things. Number one, school service personnel who work with students often in close proximity can be inhibited by masks and have been moved up to Tier 1A for vaccination by Cook County. I have not heard confirmation about Lake. Teachers are close behind in Tier 2 statewide, or Tier 1B statewide. Number two, according to a New York Times article, effective mitigation measures for the original COVID strain may not be effective with the new strain that has begun to spread in the US. Given that we've made it this far with remote learning and immunizations for staff are just around the corner, it seems reasonable to hold off on bringing teachers and students back into the buildings for a few more weeks while we wait for the infection rate to decrease or until teachers have had the opportunity to be immunized. Easy for me to say. We should all be able to find a few more weeks of patience in the interest of the well-being of our teachers, students, and their families. Kristen Kenny writes, please consider voting to return to hybrid learning. We have had ample time to be able to implement safe strategies for return. I've been working in person, face-to-face with the public, masked of course, in a healthcare setting, and we have not had any patient to employee transmission occur during our stringent policies. We can do this. Plenty of area schools have shown how successful returns can occur. Children need to see each other again, even if masked and distanced, and return to an in-school experience. Yes, even if this is still on computers. Families can choose to remain remote. As for teachers, I fully support their hard work. However, as I have been working out of the house, I know it is possible to remain safe. I had no option if I wanted to keep my job. I think teachers can do this, and I encourage the district to push forward with an option for families.
Shall I take over?
Please.
Okay, this is from a Meadowview mom. It's been close to 300 days since our kids have stepped foot in school. Last week, Illinois experienced the lowest positivity rate since November 1st. No holiday spike, no flu. The governor is expected to open up things up on Friday, but Grays Lake Public Schools are not safe enough to open. Sports are safe, but not schools. I think you, the board, and Dr. Glickman need to think about that. Last I looked, we don't have a bubble around Grays Lake. I'm sorry, but there's risk in everything we do every day. For example, cutting an apple or driving a car. We take steps to minimize the likelihood of something bad occurring. We, the parents that want in-person, deserve a choice like the parents that want to stay remote. Why does this board continue to silence the 60% of the community that voted for this in August? A choice is what we are asking for, and this group needs to listen and take action. Yes, teacher safety is very important, as is kid safety and all staff as well. Schools are a safe place. Research and data continue to support and prove this. What about the teachers that want to go back? They exist in this town. Do they not get a voice? I urge you to vote yes for in-person. The data, science, Dr. Fauci, CDC all agree kids should be back in school. Why is Grays Lake different? The next one comes from Lauren A. I appreciate what our school board has achieved during remote learning. They are doing their best in these difficult times, but my children are not thriving. It's a struggle, as we all know. I realize everyone has different circumstances for what is best for their family. I implore our board to give families and staff a choice. There are 21 out of 26 K-8 schools in Lake County that have already been in person or have concrete plans to return immediately. And I missed one. This is from a concerned citizen. I just want to point out a few things. D127 students will not be having lunch at school, so the teachers will not have to deal with students without masks. D46 teachers will have to deal with students not having masks for snack time and lunch. Retail workers do not have to deal with patrons without masks. Plus, they have plexiglass between themselves and patrons. D46 teachers will not have plexiglass, plus will have students without masks. A lot of districts that have gone back have split the day AM and PM, so students will not eat at school. D46 is not choosing that. The majority of the other essential workers don't have to deal with maskless people, plus the healthcare workers now have been able to receive the vaccine. With all that being said, I want to also add that healthcare workers, especially ER doctors, have been working with COVID since the beginning, and it comes down to wear a mask, stay 6 feet away, don't touch your face, and wash your hands. Please stay safe, everyone, with whatever is decided. Shannon Sparks wrote, based on the current timeline for vaccinations, it makes the most sense to push back the hybrid plan to start at least after spring break. It doesn't seem worth it to put everyone at risk now when we're so close to having all staff vaccinated against COVID-19. Deanna Gannon wrote, thank you to the board and staff. I can't help but be very concerned about the emotional health of our students going back in a hybrid capacity, seeing their friends but not being able to give a hug, eat together, or even see each other's faces in class. Worse, if everything shuts down again, the trauma might not be visible, but it's there. We all want to go back, but at what cost? The next is from Beth Diviaci. 21 out of 26 districts in Lake County are either back in school or have solid plans to return this month. To not offer the choice to go back in a hybrid fashion is unacceptable. It has proven that it can be done safely. Not sure what the holdup is in their district and what the continued resistance is. Woodview first grade mom. Please remember that you are voting for the entire community. The kids deserve a choice to be back in school, just as the teachers, nurses, and the target employees have a choice. They can choose to work or not. Sorry, that is a reality. A lot of people do not have the option to work remote. Then perhaps you have to make that hard decision to look at other employment opportunities. Some of our children are falling further and further behind. It's crazy that this private school down the road has been operating full in person since August. I'm getting the feeling that this district wants those of us who want in person to disenroll and attend private schools. From James Fry. First, I appreciate all the efforts of the board, the union, and Dr. Glickman in this unique time and the lengthy discussions that I'm sure they have had recently. In response to the comments about teachers, paraprofessionals, and therapists not wanting to return to work, I know that speaking for myself is the furthest from accurate. I'm working harder than ever, and I have enjoyed this chosen career for over 30 years. Returning to on-site would be an easier teaching model. My question revolves around the ECC program, it's early childhood. At one time, we had a plan of action which minimized contact and proximity of staff and students. We were informed today that it has been changed, and the new change increases the potential proximity and interaction with staff, therefore increasing the potential opportunities for exposure. Does this seem productive to the previous plan? Thank you again for hearing my concerns. The next one comes from Helpless Parent. Since the day our schools went to remote learning, students have not received the instruction, support, and experience that they deserve and are lawfully entitled to. I submit to you that the adults that have been making decisions regarding our children's education have fallen woefully short of providing our students with the education experience that they deserve. The adults here have failed the children, and the children suffer as a result. When I hear teachers speaking out against returning to school, my reaction is that they have repeatedly demonstrated that they are unable to properly educate in a remote setting. They cannot continue to teach remotely because it simply does not work. They've proven it themselves, and it needs to end today. The next comment comes from Anna Karkani. Other school districts are able to offer in-person or some sort of in-person options. Why can't D46? Honestly, at this point, it would only be fair to stop promising something you're not planning on following through. Just say you're not planning on opening the schools for in-person learning so the parents can start looking for other options. The next one comes from Barbara Pink. I'm extremely saddened to hear the responses from teachers and staff at the 5:30 public forum. I've asked this before and I will ask it again. What about the kids? Are you going to commit that 100% of all teachers and staff are going to be fully and 100% vaccinated? No, this is impossible. Impossible even for those in the most critical fields, healthcare workers, first responders, or should I say restaurant workers, grocery store clerks, and your local barista, because there is no problem interacting with them on a daily basis. But yet you want to distance yourself from our children, the children you took an oath to educate. I know these views are not representative of all teachers and staff of D46. To those who are fighting for choice, I thank you and appreciate you more than you will ever know. For those who are constantly pushing back on returning to the classroom, you might want to look at your most recent contract. You might want to think about how lucky you are to be part of D46, who has allowed you the convenience to be remote this entire time. Last time I checked, you have the option to put in for a leave of absence if you are not able to return to work. Teaching was and never will be a full-time remote position. To the board and superintendent, I encourage you to look at the mess you caused by postponing this as long as you have, the precedent you are setting, the privilege that your staff and educators are displaying, what makes teachers more special than any other profession that has been forced to return to work or has been working through the pandemic. Teachers, we rallied behind you when you were striking. We value you. But if you can't see how critical choice is at this crucial junction, then as you said, don't return to your position. As the CDC states, it is critical for schools to open as safely and as quickly as possible for in-person learning. Now is the time. The next one is D46 parent who writes, if we are still denying choice, then the board and superintendent need to be held accountable to the kids they are failing. I know that we are already registered at a private school for the fall. I anticipate many other families will follow suit, given the wait list this year for many schools. Sad that those teachers earn a fraction of the salary of our D46 teachers and schools operate without federal funding, yet they are the ones serving our community. Another from Barbara Pink. Chicago Public Schools have been supported by the Department of Public Health in their return to school, which started immediately after the holidays. I understand how it's easy for CPS to have the backing of the Department of Public Health because they are one unit. Lake County has provided guidance, I repeat guidance, not directives, so that each school can choose what's best for their communities. I ask, how is D46 worse than the city of Chicago? Our surrounding communities have committed to in-person learning. Why can't D46? Even D187 is bringing their students back. How can we justify in-person learning for our oldest students who are even more mobile in the community and disregard the needs of our most critical learners? I'll read one more and then I'm gonna hand it off to you, Mr. Lewis. From a CCSD46 community member. Let's not grow COVID weary. I want to encourage us to persevere as we are so very close to being 95% safe with the double vaccine. Continue to keep our community safe and well, especially with the current highest risk of transmission in schools for our district's zip code. Thank you.
So this comment comes from Megan Wilhite. In the earlier special meeting, I was disheartened to hear several community members say that since many employees in other fields have been working since the pandemic began, it is high time for our teachers to get back to work. I felt compelled to point out that our district teachers have been working tirelessly since the beginning of the school year to make sure our children are still receiving a solid education. Yes, things look different, but I know our district teachers have been working long hours to learn new ways of implementing curriculum and that they are giving their all to make this remote learning as successful as it can be. I am grateful for all the teachers, what all the teachers have done and will continue to do. And I think it is extremely important to take their health and safety into account as this decision is made. Thank you to the board and administration for not making this decision lightly. This next comment is from Joanne Wakeman. I would like to hear the discussion on what percentage of normal learning the district thinks the students are receiving remotely. In our house, we think it's 75% at best. And for K, that is taken from starting at 50%. We love our teachers and we know they are doing their best they can with this situation. This is not a comment on the quality of teaching, but on the situation that our kids are forced to deal with. When the majority of other schools in the county are offering some version of in-person schooling, how can we ask our children to accept something less when the risk of COVID transmission from children to others is so low? Dr. Fauci has said that the default position should be to have kids in school. Let's follow his advice. The next one is from Stephanie Arnapolen. If teachers and staff are required to be in person, will board members be required to be in person for board meetings? I think they should be, as it would be a sign of unity with our district employees. The next comment is from Blake Pavlich. Have all the teachers and staff working in the District 46 schools been allowed to vote on returning to an on-campus learning activities? The next comment is from a middle school parent. There is no perfect scenario. The vaccine is not a 100% guarantee of safety. Nothing is, and that is life. Board members, please consider all members of the community you represent, all us. This is about giving all a choice. The next one is from a concerned teachers. Students were not sent home from the Safe Center when they did not follow procedures. Why should we believe that they will comply at school? The next comment is from Jen Mertens. First of all, I want to say thank you to Dr. Glickman for all of her hard work, time and dedication to the safety, well-being, and education of all the staff and students in our district. You have spent countless hours researching, creating plans, and communicating to the community. Your efforts and hard work haven't gone unnoticed, so thank you. To the board, I am emailing you to please allow District 46 to roll out the hybrid learning model at the end of this month, beginning in February. Students are more successful inside the classroom where they get the structure, in-person assistance and care that they need. The survey that was sent out allowed every parent the option for hybrid or remote. The parents that chose remote have had far too loud a voice in our community, and I'm asking that you consider those of us that elected the hybrid model to help guide your decision. I'm an educator, 21 years, and the school district I work in has been following the hybrid model this entire school year. I have been teaching in my building every day since school started in August, following the safety guidelines set by the ISBE, IDOH, CDC, and we have had very few COVID positive cases. Schools all over the Chicagoland area are returning their students to the building, and it's time for D46 to do the same. I moved to this area so that my children would receive a quality education. I also have voted for all of you to be on the school board in hopes that you would make decisions that are best for students in this district. And you have failed our children this year. It is time to get kids in the classroom. Thank you, and I look forward to sending my children to their school in the next few weeks. Sincerely, Jennifer Mertens. The next one is from anxious staff member. You have a family member pass away from COVID in October. I'm extremely anxious. Oh, I apologize. I'll start over. After having a family member pass away from COVID in October, I'm extremely anxious to go back to work with the numbers still high and no vaccinations. Please reconsider. This is from a concerned parent. My son is in first grade at Woodview. He has always been very social and has always loved going to daycare, preschool, and kindergarten. When remote learning began, he stuck through it and did what he was supposed to. The last several months, we have had a constant argument every morning that he hates school and doesn't want to listen today. A first grader hates school. We need to start in person now. The next comment is from a teacher in district. As a district teacher, we should never be forced to put our lives in danger, especially when cases are going up and teachers have not been vaccinated yet. Please wait for cases to go down and teachers to get their second vaccination. Teachers are terrified to go back as a whole for themselves, their family, and their students, and this is not okay. Teachers have had zero choice or say in this, and this affects us and our family's health, and that is not okay. If the board can't even meet in person, why should school go back in person? Teachers have been working hard and succeeding at teaching our students. When things are going well, why can't we wait till cases are going down instead of going back when cases are rising? Then it would not have made sense to do remote learning at all this entire year if we end up going back while cases are spiking. Please wait till metrics go down and teachers are vaccinated. Thank you. This is from D46 teacher. As a dedicated District 46 teacher, I am completely shocked and saddened by some of the comments being made about teachers. My colleagues and I have never worked harder in our lives. We cannot wait to safely return to the classroom, and our students, and certainly do not use vaccines as a smokescreen to stay working from home. I have never felt more insulted or undervalued. This is from a grateful District 46 teacher. Up until this time, I have felt that the school board has taken our entire school community and our safety to heart. These are not excuses. It might be okay, it might not. I have heard from other teachers in other districts about the amazing stress of teaching in person, remote, and hybrid at the same time. We are all overstressed. All of this remote teaching has had a major impact on everyone. Our custodial staff is not so great at cleaning on a regular basis. How are they going to ensure that everything is cleaned and disinfected in a COVID world? It does not matter what other districts do. Look at what is right. Teachers are working harder than ever. I've been teaching for a long time. I know how hard we are all working. Let's wait to get a vaccine. Parents send students to school sick. How are we going to make sure we are safe each day? I have had COVID. I have lost a family member. My daughter has had COVID. It is not good. Perhaps teachers will just leave the profession to stay safe. I am so proud of all that we have done with our students. All we are doing is just changing our location. Teaching and learning is not changing. The small number of students that are returning will now just be in school en masse behind their computer. I hate that this has become an argument and divisive. We love our students and care for them more than you will ever know. This is from Amy McCluster. Why is Grays Lake not as safe as the city of Chicago? This is
Oh,
from
you
a
need to.
D4. Go ahead.
If you need a break.
I'll do this one. D46 parent. I would like to thank our teachers for working so hard and making this work. It is not great, but we are in a groove. We talk about consistency in learning. How is it going back in the middle of a trimester? A good choice.
This one is from a concerned parent. I agree with the other comments saying that teachers are essential workers. I'm sorry, but if someone is concerned about their health, they need to either stay home and work remotely or find a job like all of us, other essential workers. I'm tired of hearing excuses that you're trying to keep everyone safe. Other districts have found the way to work through the same situation. Why D46 cannot? Let the teachers and kids with the health issues stay remote, and the ones who want to send their kids back, do it. Choice is what you're not giving us, and we want it desperately. Inquiring dad, what is the percentage of teachers that do not want to return? The community deserves to know. Concerned parent, our schools need to return and be open in person. Please vote in this manner. Those quoting science to keep our kids from learning have not been looking at the actual medical studies. Please move forward. And that is it for comments at this time.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for reading through all those comments. The next point on our agenda is board reports. Any board members have anything to share? No. All right. All right, then we'll move to you, Dr. Glickman, for the superintendent's report.
Yeah, thank you for tonight. I will first pass this over to Chris Wolk to talk for just a moment about Family Fitness Night.
Thank you. As some of you may know, that on January 5th, the district's physical education teachers hosted the first remote family fitness night. I spoke with them earlier this week and this morning. They had, across the district, we had over 50 families participate in multiple breakout sessions. Some of them which were included Steal the Bacon, Rock, Paper, Scissors, and more. While it was the first time that they did this in a remote setting, the PE teachers were thrilled about the turnout and enjoyed working as a cohesive group across the district, planning and hosting the event. So it was, they had a lot of fun. They all smiled about it this morning.
Thank you. I'm going to hand this over to Dr. Diaz for a moment to talk about access testing.
Sure. Yes, I just wanted to update you that the English assessment, language proficiency assessment that's usually given in January has actually then been postponed by ISB until the earliest of March 15th. So.
Thank you, Dr. Diaz. I have two topics to talk with you about. One of them was mentioned many times during public comment tonight, and that was about vaccination for school staff. This is a conversation that's been happening throughout the community and between Lake County school superintendents. Just today, we had a meeting with the Lake County Health Department, and so I have some updated information to share that I shared with our staff today. I'm very pleased to tell you that many of our school districts will be coming together to create what we're calling a pod, which will mean that there will be one location for our all of our staff members to be able to go and get their vaccinations. We are working on that very diligently to get it organized. I'm sure you can imagine there's a lot that has to be done, which actually includes the school districts working together to even hire some nursing staff to actually give, or other health staff to actually give the vaccinations. There are also many other staff members that will be needed. And in fact, they're looking for a variety of health workers from the community who might be willing to volunteer their time as a part of a community message that I'll be sending out in the next day or two. I will share information about how one might go about actually volunteering their time to help out with those vaccinations. In any case, and that might be for our pod or for other places in Lake County. I did want to share that we're told that that rollout for vaccination should happen. Well, you probably all heard February. We are hoping for the first week in February. We hope for our staff, but we don't know that for sure yet. I was reminded today by the Lake County Health Department that when you do vaccination after the first shot, somebody has 50% immunity. And then sometime down the line, there's a second shot. We don't know if it would be 3 weeks, if it would be 4 weeks. It depends on what vaccine is available to us, and we don't know that. But either way, within 5 or 6 weeks of the first shot, you have 95% immunity. So that was really good news for all of us. We also heard today that our social workers, our school psychologists, our occupational therapists, and our physical therapists, and our SLPs, our speech language pathologists, can actually register not as educators as they had done, but as health workers, because they do so much one-to-one work with students. So they all went back in and registered, and some of them already have gotten the news that they are ready to get vaccines. So in the next week, I think. So that was really great news too. So that's what I wanted to share about vaccination. I also wanted to mention the ESSER II funds. So you've all been hearing about the federal government devoting another bunch of money to schools. And so we've recently been given some information. We've been given information about the allocation. So that allocation is $953,000 for our school district. So that's wonderful news. There were recommendations from the State Board of Education about what that money might be used for, but I will be clear with you, we don't have clear information yet as to whether or not there will be strings attached. We don't know for sure how free we are to make our own decisions about how we're going to be spending the money, nor have we been given the opportunity yet to even apply for the money. We just know it's coming, so we don't know when it's coming. We have had some preliminary conversations about what are some of the things, excuse me, that we might be able to do with those funds. We certainly, one of the topics that Dr. Ayala, our state superintendent, talked about in terms of those funds is it being used for learning loss. So certainly we will expect that we'll be applying some of it towards that topic, possibly for summer school programs, possibly for curricular materials as well. Later, I'll be talking about mitigation strategies that we have in place for our hybrid learning plan, and we are really very pleased and proud with the mitigation strategies that we are putting into place. But should we decide that there are other mitigation strategies that we need to look at, if that were the case, some of these funds could go towards that. I mentioned earlier the vaccination and our responsibility to help pay for that, the staffing of it. We don't know yet what our portion will be, so there's a possibility that some of the funding could go for that. So those are some of the options that are available to us. Also, I have this statement from Mary Whirling, one of our interim chief school business officers. I'm just going to read it to you because it's kind of a caveat statement. It's one of those we don't know what's coming next statements. So I'm just going to read it. She wrote, in addition, given the budget challenges for the state of Illinois that exist for the current and the next fiscal year, school districts will likely see a proration and a delay in the release of payments of the mandated categorical reimbursements for transportation and special ed room and board both this year and next year. What this could mean is that a portion of the new ESSER 2 funds may need to be used to fill gaps in reimbursements for mandated categoricals that school districts may be facing. So a short version of that is really, we've gotten this money from the federal government, right? What we don't know is if we're going to have a shortfall from the state government. And we'll have to wait and see. And I believe that closes the superintendent report. Indeed, it does.
All right, thank you, Dr. Glickman. Next on our agenda are committee reports. We have the Community Engagement Committee listed. Mrs. Miller?
Yeah, just really quickly, we met yesterday and we had a lengthy discussion about a number of different school-specific priorities and also talked about the Avon Food Pantry, which you're familiar with. Mostly, I just want to commend everyone on that committee, especially for showing up in light of what happened in DC. I can't tell you how committed each of them is to coming together and bringing our community together and serving, whether it's meals or food donations or teacher appreciation. There's just a really strong commitment on that committee's part. So thank you to all of them.
And I agree. I'll add my comments to that as well. It's just a really good meeting to kick off again after the winter break, and just a real committed group of community volunteers that are driving some of those initiatives forward. So thank you for sharing that, Mrs. Miller. The consent agenda is next on the list. Can I entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda, including the personnel addendum that was shared earlier today?
So moved. Second.
Okay. A roll call?
Braden,
Aye.
Nash,
Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Strack.
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Mack,
Aye.
Weedman.
Mr. Weedman had to leave the meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Good to know. Okay, that motion passes. And next on the agenda, we have one action item to vote on tonight. I need a motion to approve the termination of employment for Jordan Schwamb as an employee of the school district effective immediately.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Okay.
Miller,
Aye.
Mack,
Aye.
Nash,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Moving to the unfinished business items on our agenda, we have the hybrid plan update and a strategic planning update. So I'll hand it back over to Dr. Glickman.
Certainly. I do have a slideshow to share with you, and so I'm going to ask that Mr. Vipon put that slideshow up for us. Thank you. And I just want to comment, this is not a full presentation. Really, I have one piece of information to share with you, and then I'm going to, as briefly as possible, review the information that was shared with our entire community via my email yesterday. But we'll go to the next slide, Mr. Vipond. All right, so before we dive into the question of whether or not we are beginning our hybrid plan on the proposed timeline that we've been looking at, I want to share with you this sample dashboard that we have put together. And the concept of this dashboard is that once we have begun hybrid learning, this document would be publicly available on our website so that parents and guardians and staff and any community members can see internal illness and absence data for our school district. Now, please know what you are looking at is sample data. Note the watermark. Those numbers mean nothing. We just put numbers in there just for sample. Okay, please understand that. I'm going to walk you through it. So first of all, you can see you'll be able to view how many confirmed or probable cases of new confirmed or possible cases there have been over the last 14-day period. And that would be both staff and students kind of all together, available for you to see at each school. The next line is exclusion data. So it's 7-day rolling averages of students and staff who would be excluded from school due to confirmed or potential exposure to COVID-19. So the first one is about cases. The next one is about people being excluded from school for possible exposure or true exposure. The next one is a staff health index. This is a 3-day rolling daily staff attendance rate. And I want to pause on that one just to point out that the reason that's important to us to display is because our staffing margins are very slim. We don't have a lot of extra staff. We don't have very many substitutes who have responded that they would like to be subbing in hybrid learning. And so if we are in hybrid learning and we have too high of a staff health index or too many people absent, it's possible that we would need to close a site for a temporary period of time, if not the entire school district for a temporary period of time, go back into remote learning while people recover, and then we can be back on site. And then we have a final line of student absences for COVID-like symptoms. So this is just going to show how many students are absent for school on the most recent instructional day, reporting COVID-like symptoms. So this might be children who have COVID. It might be just families that say, yeah, they might have COVID. They have a COVID-like symptom. So we're hoping that this information will be useful to us as a communication tool, useful for our community to see what's happening in our school district. And with that, we'll go to the next slide. All right. So these next two slides are going to show data that we've already been looking at, although there's a new line of data at the bottom because soon before closed session, the Lake County Health Department updated their data, so I put it in. So this is incidence rate, just showing it to you again from December 28th to the most recent date of January 10th. This is Lake County 7-day rolling average rates. And you can see it goes from 28.9 to the last one was 35.8. Next slide, please. All right, this slide shares the same type of information, but it's for our 3 zip codes. And so, excuse me, sorry. So our 3 zip codes. And they're averaged together using a weighted average. So it's not a third, because we don't have the same number of students residing in each one of those zip codes. So we weight them according to where the students live. And you can see that rolling average goes from 26.61 on December 31st to the most recent at 35.968. And as I've described before, this data, which is a 7-day rolling average, can include people who are living outside Lake County and got tested in Lake County, but it can also, then it doesn't include people who were tested elsewhere. So it's not solidified data yet. All right, let's go to the next one. Okay, so now we're going to talk about changes in guidance that we've received. And the first piece of information regarding that guidance is a change to the language that's being used. And in the past, you know that the Lake County Health Department was making clear recommendations for in-person learning, hybrid learning, or virtual learning, what we actually are calling remote learning. They have changed it to the language that's used by the CDC, going from lowest risk of transmission in schools to the highest risk of transmission in schools. So that's a change to the language. Mr. Vipine, can you please click on the decision dashboard for us? And I'm going to ask you to scroll. It's hard not to do this myself. I'm going to ask you to scroll down. Okay, we're going to pause right there. Thank you. So I want to look at the Lake County data. The overall Lake County data will be easiest for us to look at. You can see that the most recent measure shows the highest risk indicated. So up until this past weekend, it would have said virtual. And then it changed over the weekend. Now it says highest risk. So that's how it's changed. I wanted you to be aware of that. There is a lot more information on the website about changes and how they are expressing their recommendations and what they mean. We're not going to look at it through the website. I have that information on other slides, I think. So I'm going to ask Mr. Vipon that you go to the next slide, please. Okay, so also on the Lake County school decision, on the dashboard, they talk about how they are changing their level of recommendation. It has always said on there that the decision to offer virtual, hybrid, or in-person learning is determined by local school districts. That's not changed. However, they had been in the past making a clear recommendation based on the metrics. They're no longer doing that, and instead are talking about what CDC has been talking about, which is that there are indicators and thresholds for risk, which is what we were just looking at, and we'll talk about that again. Then there's this explanation about how you turn the Lake County Health Department data into CDC numbers, and that is really complicated. I'm going to talk with you about that for a moment because I emailed with a parent about this today, and I have to tell you, I had to hear about it quite a few times myself before I understood it. So bear with me for a moment. The way the Lake County Health Department talks about their numbers, they talk about a 7-day rolling average, okay? But every day counts. Every marker counts as 1 day. The CDC talks about 14 days. So what that means is today, the most recent data that we have for our 3 zip codes, we're not going to go back to another slide right now, but if we did, you would see that it was roughly 36 cases. That's a round number. You have to take that 36 cases and multiply it by 14 to look at it the way the CDC looks at it. So that's 36 cases times 14 days, which I've done the math, so I can share with you. It's 504 cases. Mr. Vipon, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and click on that CDC chart for us. Okay, so you can see if you're just looking at incidence rate, and we'll be talking a little bit about whether or not we should just be looking at incidence rate. But if you just look at incidence rate, you can see that at 504 cases using that algorithm, we're in that highest risk of transmission of schools because that is anywhere over 200. And in case you want to do the math backwards, I want to remind you that we've been talking about that 14 threshold all this time, right? So back when we were talking about 7 to 14 is the incidence rate to look at for hybrid learning. That's what we were looking for, right? We wanted to get back down to 14. Well, if you take that 14 number that we were used to talking about and you multiply it by 14 days, you get 196. So that's where that 196 shows up in that yellow column. 50 to 200 is a higher risk. It's not at the highest risk. So that's my little math lesson for the day. Let's go back to our slides, please, Mr. Vipond. And we'll go ahead to the next slide, please. Okay, and this is language that I have pulled for you from the CDC website. I linked it into the communication that was sent to families yesterday so that people could choose to read the entire thing, but I truncated it here because of what it is that we're actually talking about. And the topic that we're really talking about is what's at the bottom in the red. Because it talks about this level of risk, and then it says, if community transmission is high, and that's the situation we're in right now, right? Highest risk, community transmission is high, but school and community mitigation strategies are implemented and strictly followed as recommended, then the risk of introduction and subsequent transmission of COVID-19 in a school will decrease. And that's the topic. That's what we're talking about now, is whether the mitigation strategies, whether we should be relying on the mitigation strategies that we've put in place to go ahead and open into hybrid, even though the metrics show that the incidence rate is still at the highest risk level. Please go to the next slide, which I believe is my last full slide. All right, and that brings me to those mitigation strategies, which I also made available for everyone to view yesterday. Mr. Vipon, can you click on that for us, please? Yeah. All right, so I'm not going to go through every one of these for you, although I'm happy to answer any questions that the board might have about them. But what I just want to point out is that we've worked really hard on these. And I can, what I actually want to point out is the nuances of the ones where it says partial, okay? Because most of them say, yes, these are the CDC recommended strategies, and yes, we have them fully in place. That's what the yes means. But I want to talk about the partial ones. The first one is about cohorting, which you'll remember is having kids move, not even move, but kids be with the same kids all day long, which is what we'd love to have happen. We have that for most of the time, but there are some times when students will be with other students. So here are the examples. And it's divided here from middle school and elementary school, but really it's the same how we're handling it. There will be some students who have to leave their homeroom classes to go to other rooms with other students in small groups for some reading support sometimes, maybe for English language support, some of our special ed resource support and related services. That's an example. In PE, there will be cases where we bring 2 classes together. Now it'll still be small classes, small groups of kids. You know, we first of all can't have more than 50 children or people in a space, but if we have 2 classes that we bring together and they both have 10 students in them, which is very likely, we'll still only have 20 children in the gym, and they will still be spaced, you know, always spaced 6 feet apart and masked, unless of course, maybe they're having PE outside, which we'll want to do plenty. And then lunch also will be a larger group. Lunch, as we've talked with folks about, is going to be in large spaces like our multi-purpose rooms, not using tables, but using individual student desks that'll be spaced 6 feet apart. And again, we cannot have more than 50 people in a space, and that includes the adults who are supervising. So that's the cohorting one. Staggered scheduling is the other one that does not have, that we've put partial. And that's really because full staggered scheduling might be having entirely different grades starting at different times during the day in a school, which is not something we're able to do with our buses and with our staff, frankly. So as always, early childhood has a different schedule than K-4. We have we're purchasing a dismissal app. I believe we purchased a dismissal app to support the dismissal process so that the supervisors out front will be able to communicate with the teachers to let them know when it's time for students from that class to come on out. So that's something that we've done. And as possible, students are assigned different entrance locations at the start of the day, although there are some cases where that is not as possible. And if you can keep going down. And then finally, the physical barriers and guides, we absolutely have purchased them. I simply am mentioning that we purchased them for school offices and small offices that are used for small group or individual instruction. We did that because in those cases, the teacher and the students need to be sitting kind of across from a table from each other. So we need that physical barrier. We did not purchase them for teacher desks, as students will not be, we're not expecting and allowing students to be coming up to the teacher's desk. We'll be training them not to be doing that. And the recommendations we've received were that it was not useful to have them around student desks either. So those are our mitigation strategies. And if you can go back. Yep, and that brings us to the end. I have, the final slide, I believe, is just a closure to see if board members have any specific questions for me about what I shared before the board goes into discussion.
Hi, Dr. Glickman. I do have a question. Actually, it's a nuance of some language. I was wondering if Mr. Vipon could go to that slide with the excerpt of the CDC guidance. That one, please. Yes. I'm noticing this word for the first time. Alternately, if community transmission is high, but school and community mitigation strategies are implemented. I'm noticing the word community mitigation for the first time. I've been focused on the school mitigation. I have every faith that we as a school district can implement and strictly follow the mitigation strategies laid out in the school setting. But I have to say, as evidenced by some reports of local restaurants in town having shoulder-to-shoulder maskless patrons, reports of local sports teams traveling out of state for tournaments maskless, I am not at all convinced that our community mitigation strategy is strong. In fact, it kind of seems abysmal at times. So I guess I just wanted to note that those are two different things. They're part and parcel of the same thing to help reduce transmission in our schools. We can control one, we can't control the other. So I wanted to make that point. I don't know if any other members have any commentary on that, but I felt it important to talk about that.
Jason, thank you for pulling that out. I did some reading based on some of the advice from some emails that we got and some other people who have helped me find information. And the American Academy of Pediatrics guidance for safe schools, it echoes that and says schools are not drivers of transmission, they're actually mirrors. So to me, that's hopeful that we have a lot more control over whether our kids come back to school and stay in school, and perhaps even in the long term, in the fall, thinking about coming back in person. We have a lot of control about where we eat and what our personal habits are. So thank you for calling that out. I appreciate it.
I know the board has a lot of discussion to have. I just want to know if we can take this presentation down unless there's anybody else, any other slides anybody wants to look at. Okay. All right, then, Mr. Vipon, I'm going to ask you to stop. Yeah, that'll be easier for everyone to see. All right, great.
We'll just keep Mr. Vipon on standby should we need to pull anything back up for reference.
I'd open this time up for the board members to share their thoughts as we move forward towards, maybe a little bit of a decision tonight. So anybody like to share their thoughts, please feel free to go ahead and begin.
Mr. Mack, I don't mind going first, I suppose.
Very good. Mr. LaCroix?
Yeah. So first of all, I'd like to thank everyone who shared their stories through the comments tonight and through emails over the past several days. Hearing those stories is important for the board. One of the things I'm proudest of in serving on this body is that the fact that to a member, I don't think there's an ideologue among us. We aren't hardened in positions, but we're persuaded by reason and facts and logic. So that's why those stories are important. So thank you for sharing. So in considering my vote on the issue before us tonight, I was quite viscerally moved by the stories from members of our community, our neighbors, frankly, who desperately need their children back in school for a variety of reasons. Children who are languishing in the remote setting, children whose emotional well-being might be suffering, and families for whom this arrangement just isn't working for myriad reasons. I am similarly moved by the earnest and valid concerns of our teachers and staff. While the science is in general agreement that school attendance is of smaller risk to school-age children, the guidance isn't as clear that the same is true for our teachers and staff. And when thinking about studies that show schools have a relatively small impact on pandemic level spread of the disease, I think about what that really means, right? It just means that schools aren't driving pandemic level spread, and like Mrs. Miller just said, more of a mirror than a driver. So that doesn't mean it's even close to risk-free. It's just an important distinction that I think I've made in my mind. I'm not moved by what our neighboring school districts may or may not be deciding for their own districts. Dr. Glickman explained in detail the change in guidance from the Lake County Health Department, going from what was a prescriptive model to a more descriptive model, indicating the levels of COVID-19 in schools. At the level of metrics and transmission we're seeing now, the change in guidance language is meaningless as it relates to our decision, I think. I don't know how these facts are moving neighboring districts to make this decision to return on site. And I can't base my decision on what these other districts are doing. At the end of the day, we've been through so much, we've sacrificed so much to get to this point. There is a vaccine that's rolling out imminently. So to me, now is not the time to let up and give in to this. We're 10 yards from the goal line. I think we should have the patience and the fortitude to stick it through just a little bit longer. So I am supportive to moving to our hybrid plan, regardless of the underlying metrics, when the vaccine rollout reaches phase 1B. And by this, I'm suggesting a timeline just 2 weeks after the first dose is available to the staff. I say that because at that point, I think the science talks about 50% immunity being conferred at that point. And I feel like that, in conjunction with our fully implemented mitigation strategies, that gives a significantly higher level of safety for our school community and our families. And it only delays the current timeline by about 2 or 3 weeks. So until then, I cannot in good conscience vote to move forward with the hybrid plan on the current timeline. Thank you.
I'd like to, I echo Jason's sentiments. I feel the same way as far as waiting the 2 to 3 weeks, or pushing out the date to 2 to 3 weeks because of the potential for the vaccine and other things. But one thing I want to say is that first really is that to suggest that any of us on this board don't put the best interests of the students or staff first in this or any of the decisions we make is simply wrong. Everything we do is with those interests in mind, and we may not get it right every time, but we strive to serve the community to the best of our abilities, to be sure. And anyway, that's all fine and good, but and if a majority of the board is in favor of proceeding with the hybrid option, I'll support it. But the community has to be crystal clear that the responsibility is on all of us. So to the community, are you practicing the 3 Ws? Are you wearing a mask, watching your distance, washing your hands? How many of those who are pushing for a return to the classroom continue to frequent restaurants and bars? I can tell you on the rare occasion in the last 10 months that I've found myself in downtown Grays Lake in the evening, I can tell you that there are many community members who continue to put entertainment above education. So to those people, I would say, if you're serious and you truly support a return to the classroom, you need to commit to doing what needs to be done to ensure the health and safety of our teachers and students. And if you're not willing to forego dining out or going to a bar, then you don't support the teachers and students, and you're not serious about getting them back in school. This hybrid option can work and probably lead to a full return to school. But it requires the full support of the community. And otherwise, we're going to be back to remote learning in short order because somebody had to go to emails. So the community has to go into this with their eyes wide open and understand that we may go back to remote a week after we start hybrid if everyone is not committed to making this work. So, I personally think we should hold off But again, I will support the majority of the decision of the board, and that's just where I am right now. Thank you.
I'm going to go just kind of in order on my screen, give everybody a chance. Mrs. Nash?
Of course you would. Of course I would be next in the order. Mr.
Just on my
Mack.
screen. Just on my screen.
You know, because as my colleagues have said before me, that, you know, just hearing the discussion and the comments, you just can't help but be moved by the various perspectives, issues, challenges, and successes of the families here in our community. I have been, well, before I say that, I want to thank all of the community members who've raised their voice, right? Because, you know, while we may differ on timeline or approach, I think rooted in all of this is the goal to get our children back in school in the most safe, effective manner possible. And so by raising your voice through emails or public comments, you're being a part of the solution while you may not necessarily support or agree with ultimate outcomes. So I do appreciate that. I have personally been an advocate for family choice. We can't lose sight of the fact that we have roughly half of our community pushing for hybrid or returning to in person, and then the other half that's pushing to remain virtual or remote. But in that, you know, I think when we're talking about considering or balancing the health, safety, and welfare, we need to make sure that we're conscious of all of our key stakeholders in this. And our principal stakeholders are our students, our teachers, the support staff, administrators. Our teachers underpin the success of us being able to go hybrid. And while there's not widespread evidence of children being mass spreaders or super spreaders of this virus amongst that age group, that's not to say that for the adult population or the more at-risk population that many of our teachers find themselves in will not be affected. And so if the teachers are the glue essentially that holds all this together, I mean, you know, I'm for hybrid, but how do we do this responsibly where we're not putting the most critical, you know, resource in this equation at risk, so that we're not finding ourselves in the proverbial remote in person cycle, because we haven't considered and properly weighted or measured the risk that going back too soon can present to our teachers, right? So that's where I'm at. We're really close to having a vaccine. I am not a proponent of continuing to kick the can until down the road until COVID is eradicated, because I think it's clear COVID's here and it's here to stay. But how do we best mitigate? And I think Dr. Glickman, you and your staff have put together really good, reasonable mitigation strategies. I think that coupled with a first wave vaccine for our teachers would make me comfortable with proceeding forward with the hybrid plan. I'm really assured hearing the plan to have the centers that the Lake County superintendents have worked and leveraged their collectiveness to bring forward mass opportunities or these pods for our teachers to be vaccinated in short order. So I think the plan, you know, to echo my colleagues and Mr. LaCroix and and Mr. Strack, the end is near. I think we're right within reach. And I have, again, continued to advocate for family choice. I continue to do that. But I also want to make sure that we're not losing sight that if we are not considering and properly balancing the potential health implications for our workforce or our teachers that are enabling the hybrid model to work, then we're doing ourselves a disservice. I guess lastly, I'd say that the fact that the late count, the fact that our public health officials, whether it be local, state, or federal, have loosened the language around the guidance to school districts doesn't change the metrics, right? And we see the metrics continue to go in the wrong direction. And, I would be remiss, especially as it pertains to our 3 main zip codes. I would be remiss if I didn't call out the needed call to action, as eloquently put by Mr. Strack, that we're all in this together. And we all want our children back in school, on site with their friends, recognizing that the hybrid model is not going to afford the traditional in-person learning, but it will be an offering to families. But if we really want to get serious about reeling this in, nailing it down, we have to do our part. And, the 3 W's were referenced, but, I will tell you personally, just as a parent, whose children, both of my children who are in D46 schools, have both severe asthma and allergies, to hear the stories of their classmates right now in class from Florida, because they're hanging out at theme parks every day, or on vacation in Mexico, or traveling around the country for the holidays. It's very, very disturbing, because while a community member may be making that choice for their family, when those children, those families come back home, you got to think about the larger community that you are potentially putting at risk, not only your family, but other families in the district who want their children in school just as much as you do, and our teachers who passionately want to be there doing in-person instruction for all D46 kids. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Nash. Again, I'm just going in order. So Mrs. Miller.
Yeah, thank you. So I, first of all, just want to thank the parents who are engaged in education and who have taken the time to write thoughtful emails. Many of you have sent articles and introduced perspectives that I hadn't thought of. I really appreciate those. And like Jason said, those stories do move me and they resonate with me. And so for those of you whose kids are struggling, I ache for you, and I hear you, and thank you for sharing those. Those definitely have an impact when they're shared. I also appreciate those parents who have provided encouragement to our teachers. I know we've said it before, but in the last 10 months, they've literally built a virtual district, and they had no preparation and no notice. So to say that, to say anything except that they're doing a phenomenal job, it would be untrue. Even if it's not working for your kid, our teachers are working really hard and they're being very effective. I also want to thank parents who have refrained from using hyperbole in your emails. Gross hyperbole has not served our country in the past few weeks. So to see it come across our email desks, our email inboxes in the last few days is not helpful. It's very distracting. So for those of you who have refrained from using metaphor and not metaphor, but hyperbole, I really, really appreciate some of you who have just sent steady, calm, logical messages to us. Very helpful. So in response to many of the ideas that have come across our email, I went ahead and read some articles that were shared with me one of which I read again, which was the American Academy of Pediatrics Guidance for Safe Schools. And I love the perspective of we need to get kids back in school and we need to be thinking about whole children. And when I thought about that and looked again at the extensive mitigation procedures strategies that are in place and that are feasible in our district, again, thank you to the administrators and teachers who put those together. I'm confident with mitigation strategies and their implementation consistently, and with the vaccines, that even in the context of the highest risk community spread, we can come back safely. So similar to Mr. LaCroix and Mr. Strack, I will support whatever the board decides, but my preference would be to delay the start of school to delay the start of hybrid until our teachers have been vaccinated. I think it's imperative that we protect the district legally and fiscally, and most importantly, that we protect the long-term health of our teachers, of our staff, and of our students, and any adult who's in the building. And then the other caveat to that support would just be a request from our administration to revisit an illustration of what hybrid instruction is going to look like. I think there are lots of people who are struggling right now, and I think it would be good to have expectations aligned with reality, that while it is a move in the right direction, this is not a return to normal. So I hope that there's no parent that's going to be set up to think that their kid is going to come home happy and it's a reset or, a rewind to when school was in session fully in person. I think that would be very disheartening to any parent who thinks her kid is or his kid is going to come home happy and fully normal, or talking about a normal school experience. It won't be that way. So if that could happen, I think that would serve our community well.
So, go ahead.
Just thank you. Go ahead.
So, Christy, just to clarify, are you asking for a brief review of what it will look like from the child's point of view? Is that right? Of what a child is going to be experiencing at school?
Yes, and maybe even just our kids, all of us have been in chronic stress, which is trauma, as I understand it. And Mrs. Lorenzo, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this. I know you're the mental health expert here. But I think we can expect that kids might be exhibiting behaviors that they didn't exhibit before because of all of the stress that we're living under, that will be displayed in a classroom setting as well as at home. So not only a review from the child's perspective, but also what can we expect given the stress that we are all under right now? What can we expect moving forward so that parents know what to expect when their child comes home?
Sure.
If that's possible.
Do that briefly right now, if that's what you're asking for. And I'm actually, and I do want to say we desperately hope that our students are going to feel happy at the end of the day, regardless of whether at home or whether they're in the school setting. Although, of course, we know that they have all experienced trauma in one way or another. And for sure, what's happening at school in our hybrid plan, whether it begins at the end of January as we had last planned, or if it's moved forward a little bit, it won't be like it was before last March. And so, Mr. Lewis, I've done so much talking today. I would not mind your support. And besides, you wrote that wonderful. You don't have to read it again. Don't worry. It was really long. But but you were the writer. If you could just speak for a moment about what a child might be experiencing while at school, that might be. I think that's what Mrs. Miller's asking for.
Absolutely. I was thinking about my script for the day in the life of a student. I don't have that pulled up, so I'll do my very best about all of that. Mrs. Miller, all of us at school completely agree with you that a return to school does not mean a return to what school looked like prior to March 13th. We know that and I'm going to try to do my best to capture some of the big ideas, but not go too detailed. But we know that when students arrive, they may have to wait in their car or on the bus until they get released to come into the school. We'll have to monitor how many kids are entering at any one moment in time. We don't want to keep them outside depending on weather. So they may need to, and we'll need to have the walkers come in quickly, so we're not keeping them outside. They will have their temperature checked by one of our employees, and then hopefully go right on to their classroom. So probably it will be in an organized fashion for them to enter in the school. In some buildings, it will be in different doorways. Some buildings, it'll be in.
I'm going to interrupt. I picked the person who wrote the script, so he really actually does remember his script. I'm gonna let really
Go faster.
I think really what Christy wants to know is what's the learning going to look like? Where are kids going to be, right? And what are they really going to be doing?
So we know the kids will either be in, the onsite kids will either be in an A group or a B group. So they'll either be on Monday, Tuesday, or Thursday, Friday, everyone remote on Wednesday. I'm not speaking about all the other issues with kindergarten or mile classrooms or EC. I'm just going to straight classrooms here. They are going to be invited to come immediately to their classroom, sit down, probably get started with some morning work or something to organize themselves. They'll be released to their locker or their cubby in spurts, so that there's not a bunch of people there. Instruction then will happen with both the remote students and the on-site kids at the same time, with the teacher delivering instruction. For almost all subjects, the kids will remain in the same classroom, and then other teachers may come in. At the middle school, the math teacher will be there, then the next period another teacher and another teacher. So that same group of students will be remaining together for the majority of the day. At elementary, the classroom teacher will be teaching both the on-site and the remote all day, except for the specials, where the specials teacher will come to the classroom. That's art and music at the elementary level. And then they'll go to the gym for PE. They will eventually go to the lunchroom. And I think almost all the buildings, the initial plan is for the lunchroom, unless we need an overflow into other spaces. And most of the schools have set up, not the lunch tables, but individual desks.
All of them. They're all individual desks. Yeah.
They're all working with individual desks. Some of the schools have set up 2 sets of desks, so that when kids come in, they'll know where they're sitting. And then the next group won't be sitting at the same desk that the previous kid did, so that the janitor custodian has time to clean that space while the next group of kids, because our lunch schedules go pretty fast about getting kids in and out. We know that lunch will be grab and go for anyone who requests food service. It will not be choice or hot items. It'll be all prepackaged foods for that. So the vast majority of the day will be in combination of in-person listening to the teacher. It might be some small groups on the computer with kids who are remote. We do want to have interactions with the on-site and the remote kids, because they're all in class building community. There are going to be times that the people on site will close their computers because they're just listening to the teacher in front of the room. We want that to happen. There may be times that the kids on site might be working with another aide or somebody else with small groups while the teacher is helping some of the on-site, the remote kids. An aide may also be helping some of the remote kids. It's going to be a combination of people doing all kinds of things. Our current numbers are relatively small for the on-site, and so we're still in the parameters of what the architects have identified as appropriate or acceptable in the rooms. So, Dr. Glickman, I don't know if I'm missing other topics. I'm just trying to think through all of the different things.
I think you've got it. And I just wanted to clarify one point, just because I don't want there to be confusion. The language about relatively small on site, we're really, I just want to clarify that. So we are still at about 50-50, about 50% hybrid and about 50% on-site remote. I don't know the exact numbers as of today, but it's roughly around there. But also, if we only have 50% of our students on hybrid and then they are divided into groups A and B, then we only have 25% of our students on site at a time. And I think we'll wrap that part up now. That was a little review. Okay.
And I'll just finish up by adding that I too am not moved by what other districts are doing, because I think every school, every community has unique characteristics, and each of us should be making our own decisions. And rather, I'm really proud of our district for making sure that we're taking health and safety of everyone in our school district, everyone in our buildings very seriously. So thank you. And thank you again to all our administrators. I know you have put in tremendous hours as well. And to my fellow board members, I know that we're all dealing with our own families and our own challenges in this, and it continues to be a pleasure to serve with all of you.
Thank you, Mrs. Miller. Mrs. Braden.
Yeah, so much good has been said, and I guess I want to start too by saying that the information, the thoughts, the ideas, the potential solutions, and the warning signs that have been shared by our teachers, by our community, have been incredibly helpful. I will say that I remain incredibly defensive of our teachers, and I just want to echo what Ms. Miller stated, which is we're not going to do this in a way that diminishes anything that our teachers have done. They did not put us in this situation, and they have done a damn good job. And yes, is it working for everyone? Probably not, but that is not on them. And we, as Mrs. Nash said, they are the lifeline of this place. And, we that's not helpful, I guess is what I'll say. One of the things I guess I want to say is I trust the mitigation strategies that Dr. Glickman and her staff have developed. I do believe that with what we know from a scientific perspective, that those mitigation strategies work. I think we've heard from some teachers in other districts that, that have been able to be successfully mitigate, I think has been heartening. And so, that's awesome. I would like to see us go back sooner rather than later. I would like to see us proceed with the timeline that we set out, knowing that a vaccine is really close, and with good mitigation, we can get there and also try this hybrid out and stay safe. But if I will support what the majority of the board wants to do, and respect all the different opinions. And I'll just end by saying this. Community, and I think Mr. LaCroix started this, and I don't think we can overstate this. This is not on the school district. Those numbers in the community are on us. They're on you and they're on me. And so if you're doing sports out of state, if you're traveling, if you got together with people who don't live in your home without masks at Christmas, then you didn't help this situation. And I'm sorry to say it that bluntly. And so we all need to do some soul searching about our practices and truly what our priority is. Because if we truly support our teachers and we truly support our community, we will prioritize education. And if we got other priorities, we can stay in remote learning. That's an option too. So I will hand it back over to you, Mr. Mack.
Thank you, Mrs. Braden. Mr. Weidman?
So as multiple members of the board have already stated, we take in all the information we get from parents. We take in all the information we get from the teachers. We value those opinions for or against what this hybrid plan is and the starting of the timeline. I fear the simple fact that we are potentially going to be kicking this down the road again, from having to wait until 2 weeks after the first set of vaccines, assuming everybody gets vaccinated the same day. This is going to take a while to get 400 some odd people through to get vaccinated for our district. We talked about following the science of what the metrics show us, and that's one part of that science. And the other part of the science is Christy Braden had talked about is the metrics or the mitigation factors that go into reducing the spread and reducing the risks for everybody, from the teachers to the students to the families. And I think the mitigation factors that are laid out in the district plan are sufficient and noteworthy, that they are well thought out. They're not haphazard. They're not to the point where, I don't have confidence in them. I fear that we are shortchanging our kids. We're shortchanging the children that need to get into school, that need to have that interaction. Yes, it'll be different than normal, but there are many kids and many families struggling not only with academic, but the mental health of being stuck inside the house. Many families are stuck as well with the mental health aspect. And I think we do them a disservice by not moving forward with the plan that was outlined and the dates that are outlined, and giving those families a choice to be in school with their children. I have relatives in other states. I have relatives that if the schools that their children have been in school 5 days a week since August with very little issues and following mitigation standards and mitigation policies to reduce the spread and reduce the risk. I'm not sure why other school districts or other states are capable of doing that, and we're afraid to go down that path. And these aren't just, they're not anecdotal. They're my relatives. They're my nephews and nieces that are in school. And I've asked my in-laws, my brother-in-law and my sister-in-law, and I've asked my brother and my sister-in-law on the other side of what are they doing differently, and they're not doing a lot differently than what is laid out in our plan. And the kids are moving forward. I know my son, and this will go back to that little anecdotal. My son, who is a freshman in high school right now, is struggling mightily, not only in the mental health aspect to where we have to get him help, but also in the academic. I can see him slipping. I see the smart kid failing to do his homework, no matter how many times we harp on him for it. And when you listen to the emails and the comments from parents, I can hear that struggle in their comments. They're struggling at home with their kids because they're not full-time teachers. And they need that interaction with their teachers. I respect the teachers' comments. I respect them for and against. I understand. It can be a scary thing thinking that this pandemic could end whatever else is going on with them. But we also need to get, I believe, the kids back to school as soon as we possibly can by moving forward with the plan dates that were already laid out. Using the mitigation strategies to work to bridge the gap between the vaccine, the first dose and the second dose, and getting everybody vaccinated. And as we stated before, not every teacher is going to take the vaccine anyways. I would doubt that 100% of our teachers and staff will get the vaccine. I work in a fire department and there's guys here that didn't get the vaccine. Don't ask me why, but that's just the reality of it. So my consensus, or if not technically a vote, my view on it is we should move forward with the hybrid dates that we've already set out, that we told our parents that we were going to set out with, and we were going to hold off until. If the vaccine is that close, I think we can mitigate with the mitigation that we have outlined in the plan, I think we can make that gap and make it very feasible for everybody. I know it's not a popular opinion, but that is my opinion.
Thank you, Mr. Weedman, and I'll share my comments to round us out. School boards occupy a unique role, in our society. We are not career politicians. All of us on this board are moms and dads, teachers and professionals, and we chose to get involved in this as a way to give back to our community for so much that has been given to each of us. And so, over the course of the past year, we've had this conversation multiple times, and I continue to struggle with, with everything, like my colleagues, like the community members, families, friends, neighbors, teachers. And I want to start off by thanking the community as well, the teachers, the staff, the community members who send emails. There are times when I am up late at night at 12 or 1 o'clock because I can't sleep, and I get an email from a parent or a neighbor at that time of night. And I know that we are, under the same sky, thinking of the same things and worried about the same things. I wear 3 hats here, like everybody else on this board. I chose to run and be on the board. I am a father, and I'm a teacher. And when I do hear comments that we have failed the community, I would push back against that strongly. I worry every single day about my own family as well as the families of my teachers who are teaching my children, my colleagues who I teach with in my school, the families who live across from me and down the road from me, the staff who I've come to know and love, the board members who I've come to know and love. And none of this, I can assure you, is ever taken lightly or without full consideration of so many myriad opinions that many of us may, go to bed with a righteous headache from trying to consider all the different viewpoints. I also echo what my colleagues have said previously about this being a community effort. This is not on the school board. This is not solely on the teachers. And this is not solely on the students to mitigate. It has to be a community-wide effort. We know that it has to be a community-wide effort. And if we, as Grays Lake residents, continue to pull together, we get to the other side. Okay? With that in mind, however, I will concur with my colleague Jim. I support moving into the hybrid plan on the original timeline. And I say that for a couple of different reasons. I think we know more now than we did a year ago when we first entered into this scary time. A year ago when the pandemic first, arrived, got us all into our stay-at-home orders and everything, we didn't know much about it. We didn't know much about the spread. We didn't know much about the effectiveness of mitigation strategies, masks, so on and so forth. And that has changed. So if we cite numbers, if we cite science as something that we need to look at as a metric, which I fully support, we also need to cite the science of mitigation strategies. And the mitigation strategies help us on a bridge to ending this situation as best as we can in light of the vaccine coming around the corner. I also think that it's important as elected officials and as people who are serving on the board that we understand that we have a large community that we are serving. And if we have 50%, choosing hybrid and 50% choosing to go remote, stay remote, then that is a choice that those families should be given. And we have an effective hybrid plan by a group of talented educators, administrators, and leaders and teachers who are phenomenal and will continue to do so. And I know we are nearing the light at the end of the tunnel. And I know these mitigation strategies can get us to that tunnel. I personally am waiting for my vaccine as well, and will get it the first chance I can get it. And I'm hoping that perhaps those dates can be, I will fully support because I believe Jim and I are, based on what I'm hearing, I believe Jim and I are, in the minority on this sharing session here. But I fully believe that, the vaccine is right around the corner and will be, very helpful to getting us back into a normal, somewhat normal state. But I do think that we need to, I think we are at a point. I do not regret any of the decisions we as a board have made since we started this journey back in March of 2020. I do believe we have arrived at a point where we know enough and are confident enough that we can move forward with a hybrid plan to provide that choice to the community. But I am supportive of moving forward with the things that the other board members have shared. So thank you to the community for sharing your stories with us. We listen to every single one. We read every single one time, sometimes multiply, sometimes late into the evening. You never go unheard. And understand that we too are in the same boats as you and trying to make these decisions as best as we can. So I would support the original plan, but I understand that we might be moving in a slightly different direction.
Just to be clear, Stephen, I also am in favor of the original timeline.
Okay.
Can I just jump in? I was originally in favor of the original timeline, and I've shifted to wanting to wait until the first dose of the vaccine. And that is because of the long-term fiscal and legal considerations that we talked about many months ago, but we do not, as a district, have tort liability. And I think that puts our district in financial, makes us vulnerable. So that's why, just not trying to sway anyone, that's just why I shifted to wanting to wait until after the vaccine.
Okay, I think everybody's had a chance to share their thoughts and where they fall. Dr. Glickman, did you have any questions, or do I need to, that wasn't officially a vote per se, but I'm hearing 4-3 in 4-3. Yeah, 3 is supporting the original plan, 4 supporting the plan and supporting the hybrid plan, but moving it out, an additional time frame in consideration of the vaccine. That's how I'm hearing it.
What I heard too is that what the rest of, is that anyone else was taking notes? Is that what you heard as well?
Can I ask a question? I know I had to step away because I had to go on a call. Did I miss something that stated that the vaccine was coming imminently? And that it's guaranteed to be here at that time?
Guaranteed, no. I spoke about this a little bit at the superintendent's report, that our superintendents are working together. We are working together you heard all the stuff about the pod and school districts coming together. We are expecting it early in February. But I can't, that's what I know. That's what I know.
So my second question would be is, I guess, where do we go if it doesn't happen? If it's not here by the second week of February, if it's not here by the third week of February, if it's not here by the first week of March, where do we go from there? It's what I kind of thought we were talking about prior, where we came out and trying not to kick the can down the road based on something that isn't going to be guaranteed. And we also talked about the amount of people that may or may not get the vaccine. It just seems like we're kicking it a little bit far when we have the ability to mitigate what's going on.
I only wanted to point one very unusual piece of information out to our board, which is that we all have a Wednesday night date together for many weeks coming up. So between strategic planning, a final interview for an assistant superintendent for finance, I actually think I can't find a Wednesday on my calendar right now when we don't have some kind of a meeting. So I'm bringing that up only because I enjoy being with you. Don't get me wrong. But I bring that up only because if you wanted to make a preliminary decision that had to do with waiting for the vaccine or waiting a little longer, I'm not sure. I'm hopeful that I'll have information relatively soon about when we'll have the vaccine. But I don't know. I just wanted to let you know we have a date for the next month, Wednesdays.
Jim, I'm mindful of your concern about the continual kicking of the can down the road. My original proposition that I made in my remarks earlier was under the assumption that the vaccine was available to staff the first week in February, and then 2 weeks hence. So let's just put some real dates behind it, right? The first week in February, and 2 weeks hence, I think it's President's Day weekend, the 16th Tuesday. I think it would be helpful to those who are desperately needing to latch onto something that we set a date. I'm saying 2 weeks after the first dose of the vaccine because it confers some immunity and it kind of makes less treacherous the bridge, right, with mitigation strategies and with partial immunity conferred on the staff that chooses the vaccine. And I don't even care about compliance rates. Once the vaccine's available, if someone chooses not to get it, there's nothing more I can do to protect them. So I don't know if we want to consider the 16th of February as a date, knowing that it's likely that, I don't even know if likely is the right word, but hopeful that we'll have 2 weeks of vaccine, one dose behind us, and yet we're not continually allowing the possibility of the can being kicked down the road. A thought.
Yeah, I like the idea of having a date. And even if the first dose is not given out, and check me on my logic here, we're at least that much closer and minimizing the amount of time teachers would have to wait until, and any staff would have to wait to get the first dose. So I would be comfortable. I don't know if it's February 16th, I would leave that to Dr. Glickman, but that in that mid-February range, just a 2 week delay from the original plan would be, I would support that.
It's an acknowledgement that we can't let these families who need it wait any longer.
But what I hear coming, and this is just my brain working, is what I hear coming is the first week of February we didn't get the vaccine, and we're sitting back here in another long meeting having the same conversation of saying we're going to delay it again until they get the first shot that they didn't get this week, but maybe it'll get it next week. And we'll have the same argument and the same concerns of trying to get from point A to point B and then wait 2 more weeks. And, in theory, if people get vaccinated, there's a chance that we could actually be fully in possibly by the end of the year with the vaccination rates going up, but we're delaying parts of that.
That's exactly what I'm trying to argue against is I'm saying let's set that date. Regardless.
But we have a date set, Jay. That's what I'm getting at. We have dates set.
What I'm saying is that there's a fair likelihood that we will have that vaccine in time for February 16th to be meaningful, to make that bridge between now and the return, in addition to the mitigation strategies, right? We'll make that bridge less treacherous for our staff and our families. Yet we're acknowledging we're not kicking the can down the road any further. It's February 16th, come hell or high water.
That's what I understand you're saying too, is that we commit to that, whatever that mid-February date is.
And if the vaccine gets
get the vaccine, and if we do, great. If not, well, we've committed to this date, so we're still closer than we were had we not.
And it's an acknowledgement to those families who are crying out to us that we're going to put our faith in the mitigation strategies. This is the last time that we're delaying, kicking the can down the road. That's all I'm saying.
I think it also protects us in the long term from any legal challenges we have down the road and the financial impact of those legal challenges, because we will want to make sure that we're investing all of our resources in our students and in our classrooms at the end of this so that we can go back to fully in person as soon as it's safe.
I just think I think we've made promises as we've gone forward and we've broken them already. And now
I disagree with that, Jim. We've always talked about returning safely to school, right? We're nowhere near the metrics we talked about as being contingent upon a return to hybrid learning. But we are learning mitigation strategies are maybe a little bit more effective. We're seeing neighboring districts do it. We're not sure yet if that's quite wise or not. I don't know. I think you might have a different conclusion to draw from that than I do. Is 2 weeks of bridge too far for you? Is that what you're saying?
I think the mitigation strategies that are laid out in the plan are the way for us to go and the way for us to move forward. Yeah, the vaccine is coming, but there's no guarantee District 46 is at the front of the line. There's no guarantee that the pods are going to be fully staffed to be able to run through all the district teachers that are around here, because the pod is going to be serving more than just District 46 teachers.
Yeah, understood.
And there's no guarantee that there's going to be enough vaccine doses. There's no guarantee. I mean, we were told one date when we went to get our first dose, and it ended up being 2 weeks later. We were told they got the vaccine, it's time to go, get everybody signed up, and it was a couple weeks later before we even got to the point where we got the vaccine. That's my fear as we move forward in this, is we are, if you're okay with setting a hard date of February 16th, come hell or high water, without, if the vaccine doesn't come through for us, then why are we delaying in the first place?
Well, you're overlooking the fact that there's a fair chance that we will have the vaccine. I think you're overlooking that part of it.
No, I agree that there's a chance that we could have it, but playing a little bit of the devil's advocate is we could be February 16th and nobody got the vaccine.
Well, if you're trying to force me to say I'm trying to split the baby, I'll acknowledge I am.
I mean, even if that happens, we're still then closer to people having the vaccine. You know, even if it's not available yet or hasn't been administered yet, we're still that much closer. I mean, it's a compromised position, but it's still setting a date and moving forward from there. I mean, I don't think I don't know, but it's just a. I mean, it's a commitment. I mean, it's a bit of a gamble, you know, with the hope that the vaccine is available and administered. If it's not, we're still committed to that date. But people will know that either teachers have been vaccinated or they haven't, and they'll certainly have a better idea if they haven't. Probably have a better idea of when they would be, so they can make maybe a more educated decision as to whether or not they do in person or remote as part of the hybrid option.
Mr. Weedman, I don't know that we have misrepresented or broken any promises to the community, you know, whereas we've always stated that we were going to follow the metrics, and albeit the language and the guidance has changed, us being in the highest risk category is still a fact. And I do agree that with mitigation, effective mitigation, and sound mitigation strategies like those that are laid out by our superintendent and staff, that we can start to reel that in, right? And have a little bit more assurance that the schools will be safer. I think the other component to that, though, is the community piece, the community behavior change piece, that I think, you know, we kind of all have either seen, heard, read, just the opportunities that still exist, so it is like a three-pronged approach to that. The other part, I guess, for me, in terms of delaying, one, it is that fiscal liability and responsibility piece. But again, I'll go back to my comments from earlier where I stated that the teachers kind of underpin the success of us having an effective hybrid model to begin with. And so if we are not exhausting, I don't see this as kicking the can, as I see it as making sure we exhaust every opportunity to ensure the health, safety, and welfare of our principal stakeholders, and teachers being one of them. And while, again, science is supporting that this isn't, massively spread, or children aren't so much super spreaders, we need to all contend with the fact that vaccinated, adults in a classroom with students where arguably, depending on the grade level, especially K through 4, that's going to be a challenge. Not that it's undoable, but it'll be a challenge when the kindergartner or the first grader needs help tying their shoe, right? Who's staying 6 feet apart when the kid's tripping because the shoelaces are untied? And I know it may sound silly, right? But these are the practical things that our teachers are there helping and supporting with, when the kid doesn't know how to, wipe his or her nose properly, after they sneeze. Not, just practical things that our teachers are on the front lines of doing, especially in those lower grades, day in and day out. And I don't know a teacher in our district that's going to sit there behind the desk and watch a struggling kid, right? But what does that mean in terms of following the mitigation strategy, right? It's the call of duty. They care about the children deeply and passionately, and I don't know a teacher that's going to just sit there and let a child fend for his or herself, because we're supposed to be 6 feet apart. So to me, it's not so much kicking the can down as opposed to exhausting all options to ensure that we can keep our children, our families, and our teachers safe. And to the point of what happens come mid-February, we have a drop dead date. At that point, we can say in clear conscience that we have exhausted everything within our toolkit available to meet the needs of our community at large, not one group over another. Because I think I hear us loud and clear. We all support hybrid. We all want to get back to in-person. It's just a matter of how do we do that effectively and safely.
So I'm going to ask a quick question, because we were going to roll in the certain groups, right? The certain, right? Like the mile program and whatever, we're going to go first, correct?
Yes.
So, and then it was 2 weeks before the final ones got in.
Yes.
So you're looking March 1st before the final group gets in.
Yes.
So I will say this as I have to go on another call. I will. Do you want to give a drop dead date of the 15th or 16th of February? But that means everybody's got to go in at the same time.
Well, you know what, Mr. Weedman, you bring up a good point. That's exactly where I'm going, because at that point we're in a position to accelerate, right?
So, but come hell or high water, everybody goes back in on the 16th and not delaying any more groups, because otherwise we're just pushing them out till March, and then spring break hits, and then the next holiday hits, and we're stealing days from them. So I have to go again. That will be my final comment for the night. Sorry, I don't mean to be rude.
All right.
I would support that. I know that we're not voting per se, but to the point of Mr. Weedman before he had to go, right at that point where we've literally exhausted all efforts, I think I don't, and with the goal of having the teachers vaccinated, we would have a chance to look over and relook over our mitigation strategies to make sure that we've crossed every T and I possible within our ability, both financially and logistically, that at that point, for all those who want to return on-site in a hybrid model, I don't know that we would need to have a staggered approach at that point. I do think that we could just flip the light switch, if you will.
So I'd like to just engage our leadership team for a moment in this conversation. Please understand it's not a conversation we were prepared for, but we're going to do the best we can. So our reasons. So I think what we have to do. I'm just going to engage my team on this a little bit to talk about the reasons why we were doing a staggered approach. Because
I'm sorry. Can I don't mean to be rude. May I interrupt you just for a minute?
Sure.
It seems to me it's just about 10 o'clock at night, and I am curious about. I'm sure there were reasons behind the staggered entry into school. I'm wondering if it makes sense to just set the date for February, whatever it is, and then kind of let you regroup. And then at our meeting, you can talk about, we're going to see each other next week, right? On Wednesday. Maybe you could, would that extra time be helpful to you?
I think it would, but I'm not sure if it's the board's direction now to say it will be the week of the 15th and you must all come at the same time. I feel like we need a moment to discuss that because there were reasons why we weren't coming all at the same time, having to do with all the recommendations we've gotten from other schools that have opened. So
I'm just wondering if it's the board's direction or if it was a comment from Jim before we go into a longer discussion. That's where I'm just, again, you can take it whichever way you want, but I'm not sure that was the board's direction.
I would say that if the staggered approach was necessary no matter when we started, that doesn't change. Just because Jim's of the opinion that no, now everyone has to start on the 15th. If the staggered approach is necessary to ramp this up, I think that's the discussion they're about to have, right?
Well, and I think in acknowledgement of the late hour as well, I think I don't want to spiral too far down, the conversation ladder, because it's clear that there's, a kind of a 4 to 3 movement towards pushing the date of release out to that February 16th date, if I'm understanding that. So I think we've given the direction at this point, and those other conversations then can feed from that. Each member has been able to express their thoughts, and each member has given, a kind of a yes or a no process, and you have that 4 to 3 decision.
Okay. So to sum it up, this is what I'm hearing from the board. We will push our timeline to the 16th. And there has been some interest on us shortening the timeline of that rollout, maybe everyone coming together, maybe it being over a 2-week period. We didn't talk about that, but I'm just mentioning that as a possibility. Maybe deciding that it needs to stay as a 3-week period. I'm hearing from you that it would be, that you understand that would be an administrative decision. Frankly, I don't necessarily want us to be having conversations like this next Wednesday at strategic planning, because we want to keep this kind of conversation as far away from strategic planning as we possibly can. So when I mentioned next Wednesday, it was like, if you needed to have a special meeting. So otherwise, I think our administrative team will just talk about it. We understand that there might be good reasons to want to do it a little bit more quickly and maybe not do 3 weeks. We'll talk about that and we'll just kind of let you know what we're going to do. And maybe we'll do that to one of my communications. Sound good?
Very good. Thank you.
Also related to the communication, there will be something that goes out tomorrow. I don't know when yet. That will include a message having to do with next Tuesday's remote learning planning day, which was meant to be, a lead up to starting hybrid learning. I think we need to have some conversations behind the scenes about what makes the most sense, whether it's still having that day that, families have planned for and we're geared up for, or holding off till we're closer to hybrid learning. And that's not a decision I'm going to make here on my own right now. I need to talk with some people. So we'll let you all know about that. Okay. All right.
Thank you, Dr. Glickman, and I appreciate all of the board members sharing. It's never easy, to sometimes be split on things, but we all have an opportunity to speak and all have an opportunity to share our voices and listen as best as we can. So thank you for sharing, everybody. There is a strategic planning update on here.
2 minutes. You are going to be blown away with how fast I can do this. We are keyed up for strategic planning next Wednesday. We had nearly 80 people volunteer for this, which is such a beautiful commitment to education from our community. I'm so impressed. The core stakeholder team will span every corner of our district. It includes parents and guardians, educators, parent guardians who are educators in our district, parent guardians who are educators in other districts, support staff members, someone from the Grace Lake Arts Alliance. We've got someone from the Grace Lake Public Library. We've got District 127 parents who are also our parents. We've got a future District 46 parent coming. All schools represented, administrators covering all departments, including some principals, all our board members, and we cover all programs, I believe, in terms of ECC, special ed programs, EL programs, everybody's included. There is something very tricky related to the Opens Meeting Act that I need to share with you. So think about this. We are all here together on this call, right? All board members will be there, which means it's an open meeting. If we were having this meeting on site, which I will remind our community we can't do, because ultimately in strategic planning, you do things like sit around a table together. Okay, that's a part of what you do in strategic planning is group off and sit around in groups. If we were over at GMS, any community member could come to GMS and watch us have the meeting. They could do that, and they would actually have the right to pull up a chair to a table and listen to what's going on. People don't typically do that during strategic planning, but anyone will be welcome to. We have to have the same ability during a remote meeting. So large groups will look like this, but there will be a lot more people on them. And they will be on our website and they will be recorded. When we get to small groups, those two have to be viewable by our community. So one of them will be streaming and all of them will be recorded and will be on our website. We're doing some behind the scenes work still regarding whether we're using Zoom or whether we're using Google Meet. You will get an email sometime by the end of the day on Friday, along with all the other people who are participating. And Chris, if you can put it up there again for your being Johnny on the spot, will you do it again, please? Just by go. Okay. Here's our first meeting agenda. There'll be an overview. We're going to be talking about really the ground rules, or what we often like to talk about as being norms. Talking about strategic planning versus day-to-day planning, because they're vastly different. And then we'll really be focused on mission. So a lot of talk about mission on this meeting. We're not doing it prior to this meeting, but know that prior to the next meeting, there'll be a thought exchange that goes out. So we'll be doing some thought exchanges along the way to engage more of our community members. And that is all I have to tell you right now about strategic planning.
Very good. Thank you, Dr. Glickman. I do not see anything on the new business portion, but topics for future agenda items?
Yes. At our February board meeting, we will have some preliminary staffing planning information shared by Mr. Woke. We're going to be doing, we're going to be bringing you student fees. We'll be bringing you the 21-22 calendar to look at. And we'll also be approving our assistant superintendent for finance at that meeting as well. So that's what we
Very
have.
good. Excellent. Thank you. There is another public comment session on here. Are we moving into that?
We did.
Yeah, that was early at the beginning, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Okay. And we need a motion to thank you, everybody, for a long meeting, but a very productive conversation, as we always do. I'd like to get a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, Mrs. Walker.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Nash,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Mac,
Aye.
Strack,
Aye.
and Braden.
Aye.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for your service, and thank you for everything you all do. Good night.